You may not have heard of Alcohols Limited, but we are a major player in the London dry gin market, but we don't have a brand. So we make for other private labels, around about 80 at the moment. We have a team of 4 distillers with about 85 years experience between us. And our distillery is in Langley, in the Black Country, just outside of Birmingham. So today I'm here and delighted to speak about 2 very different botanicals used in all, certainly the majority of London dry gins, and that is Orris root powder and coriander seed. Isn't it? Very pretty, isn't it? Orris root. Orris root powder comes from the stem, the underground stem of the Florentine iris plant, and that is the plant there. As my fellow distillers would agree, or hope would agree, it's the most expensive botanical regularly used in London dry gin. Frighteningly expensive, in fact. So, where are they grown and how are they cultivated? Florentine iris has been grown since about 1700 and is grown in the olive groves and vineyards of Tuscany in northern Italy. The best quality will come from fine and sandy soil. The ground is drier, the lack of water makes them easier to cultivate, and they are cultivated in a very labour-intensive and manual way. The plants are planted in August and they grow for 3 years before they can be cultivated, and the best yield will come in the 3rd year of cultivation. August is definitely the best time for the collection as it's the driest month, and the plants are very simply dug up by hand with a spade. The stems and the leaves are then cut off with scissors, and the rooted cuttings are then replanted back into the ground within 3 or 4 weeks. Now the underground root stem, as you can see on the left hand side of that photograph, is called a rhizome, and that's now ready to be processed into Orris root powder. The loose roots, as you can see here on the right hand side, are then snipped away with a knife, again very manual, very labour intensive, and the stem is then, for example, thrown into a concrete mixer with some water and some stones, and that's turned on and round she goes. This will clean the stems, but will also aid the removal of the skin from the root stem. It's then dried in the open air, cut into pieces or sliced, and then left to dry again. Then the really labour-intensive part of it is finished off by hand with a knife, removing all the skin, a bit like peeling a potato, and then it's dried for a 3rd time in the open air. Finally, it's ground into a powder, as you can see there, and that's where we come in, to use it in London dry gin. So what does Orris root powder bring to the party? Well, it has a wonderful, delicate aroma. It's very floral, as you can imagine. It's very fragrant. It's a bit like a blend of violet, Parma violet sweets, if you're old enough to remember those, and tea, some sweet teas. And this aroma, floral and fragrant aroma, increases during the period that it's drying. So it's really important for these root stems to be bone dry before they're powdered. Orris root powder also acts as a binding agent. It also binds the other botanicals' flavours together. There are a couple of botanicals used in London dry gin that will do this, Angelica root being the other. So in summary, it's very expensive, it's time consuming to harvest, but the result is definitely worth it, as it adds so many complex and fragrant and delicate additives to London dry gin. So this is Orris root powder, and now we're going to move on to the one, as Charles said, I selected to talk about. Coriander.